everybody, welcome to the Final Fantasy 16 Spoilercast, a cross-play episode between the Brothers Take and Last Call Gaming. I am Chris. I am joined by my brother Eric.
How you doing?
We are delighted to be joined by Mr. Craig Perales from Last Call Gaming.
How you doing, boys? It's been a long time coming.
This
Long
has
time
been
coming,
a long
yeah.
time coming. We should start with that. We've been actually trying to collab for quite some time, right?
I'm trying to remember what the first one, because me and you were originally the ones that were talking, trying to set something up. I'm trying to remember what the first game was, but I know it felt like a year ago at this point.
I'd say it
If
was
not longer. Yeah.
And there was a few.
Resident Evil 4?
No.
I don't know if it was Resident 4. Yeah, no, because I didn't know Resident Evil.
There was a few different things, and then the last time we tried to do something as well was Jedi Survivor.
Yeah, that was
one.
One, yeah.
But you were sick at the time, and anyway,
yeah. It's always something in my life.
and I suppose as well, it can be challenging the time differences and the different ways we work, and like I find it hard just to get me, Adam, and Eric together. So,
because what is it? Did we forget? Is it 7 hours or 8 hours difference?
It's an 8-hour time difference.
Yeah, so you guys are going to bed, and I'm just waking up.
Exactly. Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
much. Yeah.
But delighted to finally be here, to finally be doing this, and to talk about Final Fantasy 16 in the most interesting way, which is the spoilers, because this is a very story-driven game. It's heavy on the narrative, and I feel like you can't talk about like the big highlights of this game without getting into spoilers. You just can't. Like, it's those big iconic battles and all those great character moments and stuff like that. So just to put it out there, in case you clicked onto this by accident and you didn't read the title, this is your spoiler warning. There will be no point where it's like, and now we're getting to spoilers. This whole thing is a spoiler cast, and this is part 1 of our Final Fantasy 16 spoiler cast, where we'll be focusing on each dominant and their icon and the arc that they have in the story. They are some of the main cast of the story. So final spoiler warning is right there. Let's do this. Let's fucking kick this off with our main man, Clive Rossfield, the protagonist of Final Fantasy 16, and of course the dominant of Ifrit. What were your guys' impressions of Clive going into the game, and then like what do you think of the character as you played it going forward? Craig, I'd love to come to you first.
Yeah, I think Clive was really interesting. He's someone that a lot of people had their eyes on. So when you were watching some of those original trailers and you were watching this kind of character, you're like, oh, okay, new build. He's not as bright and colorful as a lot of other Final Fantasy characters generally are. You look at like Cloud and Tifa and things like that. And the aesthetic is really kind of what pulled his look in for me. I love that kind of medievalness that he has, that fantasy lore. When you start playing the game, I mean, obviously he starts off younger, which I thought was very interesting, right? He's kind of this, even though he's the firstborn, he's kind of like the second in line, apparently, for the dominant, because he was kind of passed over with the like the Phoenix Passage or whatever that was.
Yeah.
So not only does this kid already get hate from his mom, but you can tell that like he's extremely loved by the father. So when you're playing that intro, that prologue, which I believe was the free trial of the demo that you could do when it originally came out, that was awesome. It was extremely cool to see that this kid is not only like this protector of his younger brother, but an outcast within royalty, within his own family. And as he progresses and you see him get older, I think, I mean, I don't want to, let's see if we can jump into, do you guys remember who the voice actor was? Ben Starr.
Ben Starr, yeah.
Yeah, he was so well voice acted. Everything about this character when he's talking was extremely emotional. I was actually reading that I think Ben Starr's father like passed away during his time recording Final Fantasy 16.
Wow.
So all that emotion that was in there.
Hmm.
So for me, it was just, not only was this guy acted extremely well, I loved the look and I loved his role. Like I said, like he was this outcast within his own family. He gets betrayed. I mean, there was a lot of things we can dive into this character, but off the bat, I loved him when you see him in the trailer, and then following his kind of narrative by himself, because unlike the other Final Fantasy, it's not really a group party that you're assembling, and he groups up with people here and there. But when you get to follow his personal storyline, I felt extremely invested, almost like no other Final Fantasy before it.
Wow.
Okay, wow.
Those are big words.
And I don't have my notes.
That's just riffing, man. Eric, what do you think? Clive?
Yeah, I did like Clive. Now, I did think he was a little bit like some others in that you have like the dark, demeaning, sort of like depressing character, which you get with like Squall and Cloud. But I
Sure.
liked Squall and Cloud, so I
Yeah.
like Clive because the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
fun, chirpy, let's have a jolly old time
Yeah.
wouldn't have worked in this world. And like what you were saying, the fact that from the get go, when we see him be young and his mother hates him, but he, like, because he's, even though he's the oldest, yes, he's not next in line. And so his mother treats him like crap. It immediately gets into that kind of almost Game of Thrones style world.
Right.
Like he's Tyrion Lannister, essentially, of the Lannister family. Just because of essentially how he's born. The Phoenix didn't choose him. And so I really like that. And so that would obviously shape his path and how he perceives the world. And it was nice to see him as the story went on, that he gained hope. Because at the start of his story, after the betrayal, after he was pretty much enslaved and turned into a living weapon, he kind of lost hope and he had a very dark outlook on the world. And then he found hope through all the other outcasts that he found. So he does go on this really nice journey throughout it, and it's very much his story. You see it from beginning to end. So I did quite like him. As a
Yeah, I
character.
agree. I like Clive. I mean, I'm more into a lot of people. It depends on what you find cringy, right? Different Final Fantasy players find different things cringy. So some people find the real series, what they call the Edge Lord, they find that cringy. I find that cool. I'm okay with that. I would find like something like Titus, and I like Titus, but I would find that cringy. The overly happy, overly kind of overly confident and stuff like that. Like, to me, that's what I would call cringe, right?
Right.
So I quite like Clive's character. I find him a little bit more relatable and a little bit more human. His arc, he has a really great arc. I just find that they peak his arc a little too early in the game.
At what point would you say?
I would say, like, when he becomes Sid,
Hmm.
he has kind of, and that's who he is from then on, right? And he now wants to make a difference in the world. But maybe that point happens too early in the grand scheme of the game, because it's quite a long game. Like,
Yeah, it is.
a really long game, right?
It's up there.
And like, I did everything. I did all the side quests and all the hunts, and I wanted to get everything I could out of this game. And I was just surprised that, because like in the beginning you're so invested in his hunt for revenge, and then you're so invested in his hunt for kind of redemption, because it's like, did I really kill my own brother? It's like, wow, that's a lot to deal with. And then he takes on Sid's kind of goal in life, and that's his arc for the rest of it. It doesn't change at any point then for the rest of the game, I suppose.
Yeah,
So
I get that.
I was quite, like, I really liked the character. I was just really surprised that his arc remains there, because like, you take a character like, I like Titus that I mentioned a second ago, and his sort of big twist or change in character doesn't really come till towards the end of the game. Do you know?
Yeah.
Whereas for Clive, it does happen quite early on, which I think is like reminiscent of. It's not a game I've played, but I've heard lots of people talk about it before. Final Fantasy IV. A lot of people talk about Cecil Harvey, and he starts off as like a knight working for like the evil empire, and he goes out crusading and kills lots of innocent people, and then he eventually gets a change of heart and he becomes a good person, and then for the rest of the adventure, that's it. He doesn't change again. That's the rest of his arc. So kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Do you think that's a hindrance though? Do you think that slowed anything down, or was this like a negative point for you that it just there's no more yet to come?
I think it's like a very minor negative. Like, it didn't make me. I don't like the character any less.
Right.
I guess I wish something else happened to him in the latter half of the game, more so than, well, okay, I suppose something does happen to him. Right? It's hard to say. Yeah, it's hard to say nothing happens to him. But I guess I was waiting for maybe another revelation of some kind that I didn't quite get. So
it almost seems on the back half of the game they focus more on just finishing the crystals and getting the game done.
Right. It's like we're racing towards that, but also take your time and do everything, right? But
I want to ask you guys real quick though. How long did it take you guys to actually beat this game? Because I wasn't sure how long you guys how many. You said earlier how many hours it took you to play it. Like how many weeks did you guys actually get this game done in?
Oh my god!
Because I was checking this. The game came out June 22nd. I looked at my last achievement for beating it. It was on June 29th. So
wow,
I cruised through this game. So which was 2 months ago. I was curious of actually how long it took you guys to smash through this.
I think all in all for me, it was probably over 3 weeks.
I would have been the same because I think me and Chris were sort of nearly neck and neck in where we were. I think we were
discussing it a lot.
Yeah, I think I finished it a day or two before Chris. So yeah, about 2-3 weeks is how long it took me to complete it.
And we're saying how long the journey is. I'm like, okay, well, over how much time? Doing it like in a week was insane.
Yeah, that sounds insane. No, I think it was over like 3 weeks for me, and that wasn't it was pretty much the only game I was playing during that period. It was just when do I have time? When am I not working? When am I, it was just very busy at the time. But it was like whenever I had the free time, I was like, great, it's story time. Let's play Final Fantasy 16. I want to see what happens next. Like, I was really invested in this story.
Yeah, it's a good story.
But it is a good story. But I just found that after he becomes Sid, and it jumps forward in time, and that's a huge, big, shocking moment, right? Like it's amazing.
I don't know if I love that. But...
I found that I was getting less and less invested in Clive's arc. Because originally I was like, we gotta find this killer. I'm gonna get my revenge. Then after that I was like, I gotta pay for my sins. I did a bad thing. And then after that I was like, I guess I should help as many people as I can, right?
Yeah, which by the way is taking your time, which when the the world's about to end and it's against the clock, it's like, oh well, let me take the time and take months, which essentially in this time of traveling would be months of him helping out all these side characters, and it's like,
oh yeah.
It's like, this doesn't really make sense that you're gonna go help this. Everybody in the hideout has a problem of picking flowers and finding dirt patches and
collecting sand.
So Clive was really just like an everyman at the end of the game, where it's like it went from being a personal quest to being like, oh, what's the rest of the world want me to do for them?
Yeah. I think him becoming it's not exactly really early into the game when he becomes Sid. Just the ending is quite long based on the amount of side quests you're getting of picking flowers and go pick some dust by the water or something, or so that's actually so long that it feels like it's quite early in the game, him becoming Sid. So if that bit was slightly shortened down a bit more, especially as you said, Craig, the world's ending, the Halo ring is about to go off, you don't exactly have time to pick flowers, but
well, I also thought too that when he became Sid, I'm like, it would have been cooler if it was more like Dread Pirate Roberts, where you find out that Sid is not even Sid, you know what I mean, and the name's actually been passed down. The fact that this is first generation and now I'm just going to be Sid, it's like, what would it matter? Why can't you be Clive? Is just as important as Sid at this point. He's the dominant. It's not like he's Ramuh, you know what I mean? It's you're still just as cool. You're still the prince.
I had that exact same thought where I was wondering, was Sid a moniker? And that it's not that Clive isn't the first one now to take it on. That I actually thought that that's where the arc was going to go, was that later on down the line he was going to find that there was going to be some reveal about Sid. That Sid is not the person we thought he was at all. And that we were going to find a way more information about his character at a point where we can't even ask him about it because he's gone. And I thought that would have been really, really interesting.
Yeah, because I don't think Clive needed to be held down by that. I mean, I get where they were going with it, but I didn't think it was needed for him to stay anonymous or not let his Clive identity be messed with. Because because when you're at the hideout, they're constantly calling him, hey Clive, hey Sid, hey Clive. I'm like, well, which one is it? Either everyone knows he's Clive or everyone thinks he's Sid. So
I think it's a concept that's kind of cool on paper that they didn't fully commit to executing.
I think they were trying to go for a Batman thing with that.
Like Sid is a superhero name?
Yeah, so the original Sid was Bruce Wayne Batman, and now he's passing on to the next Batman, and Batman could be anybody sort of concept. Sure. Or Spider-Man, I suppose, actually makes more sense because there's actually multiple Spider-Mans. But yeah.
You saying Clive is the Miles Morales of Final Fantasy 16. Is that what you're saying, Eric?
Could be Gwen
He's
Stacy.
more,
You know what I
he's
mean?
more like the Miguel O'Hara.
Yeah, it is actually, yeah. But I love the sequence at Phoenix Gate and it's one of the first like proper relevant boss fights, and it's where he sort of fights himself. Essentially, he fights like his own inner demons manifested as like a fiery version of himself, and that's when you get like the two Ifrits kind of clashing against each other, and then he accepts
that looks sick too.
that I am Ifrit. I thought that was like great. I also was like shocked because I wasn't like keeping track of how many hours I was in, and like at that point I was like, geez, I must be near the end of this game. I was like, this feels like it's all ramping up, you know?
Like, gotcha.
Little did I know. We hadn't even left Midgar yet. That's what it felt like a little bit. But yeah, what did you guys think of like Ifrit's abilities and the way Ifrit is utilized in the story?
I thought Ifrit was awesome. One of the things I was trying to think about was, it's funny because Ifrit's usually like a starting summon. He's usually like, I wouldn't say the weakest by any means, but like, usually there's an order of like Ifrit, Shiva, you know, Bahamut's kind of at the end where they really put Ifrit like front and center as like, you know, this is the what would you call him, the seventh dominant or whatever, like the unofficial dominant. So it really makes Ifrit really special, which I really liked. That they're like, okay, cool. Phoenix is generally supposed to be the fire Ifrit or the fire dominant, but now there's a new one in town, and dude, his look was so awesome. I thought Ifrit always looked the coolest in FF10, but I'd say the FF16 version is probably now the de facto universal look for Ifrit. Or do you guys say Ifrit or Ifrit?
We say Ifrit.
Okay.
I think we're wrong.
I interchange it. I don't know what the answer is.
Because as a kid, when you saw it and they weren't speaking, I just saw Ifrit, Ifrit.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's Ifrit. Based on, I think so, but I'm not going to say it. But I think like based on, because I think it's an Arabic name. So I think it's there's probably something in the pronunciation.
Yeah, but I think in Arabic it's EF or EET. So that's why I think they're saying Ifrit.
Yeah, they're shooting themselves in the foot on that one.
Yeah.
You know what? We all know who we mean.
Yeah.
But
so I thought he looked cool. I thought his powers were awesome. I thought the whole story dynamic was cool, that he's a bigger part of it when usually he's a lesser summon. So I was completely impressed with what they did and how they incorporated him into the game, being like detrimental.
Yeah. No, it was really, really cool. I didn't fully understand even when finishing it, because like I like the idea of that they're all puzzled at who's this, like what's this second icon of fire? Like there shouldn't be a second icon of fire. It doesn't make sense. Like this is an outlier. And by the end of it, I actually don't know why there was. I know he's right. So I know Clive. And while we're on Clive, and this is like a huge part of the story, he's Mythos. He's sort of a messianic figure type thing created for the purposes of like becoming the strongest vessel for the villain, who we won't go into right now because we're saving that for part 2. So I get his role, but I don't know why. I don't actually know where Ifrit comes into it. I don't.
I was almost kind of pondering on the idea because they never really get into Leviathan, the Lost. Right. Maybe he kind of takes the spot again, and because the brothers were synced, it had to be a fire icon. That's the only thing I could kind of think. I'm like, maybe he takes up the circle, and because they're linked, it's just the same element. But again, they never really told us why Leviathan's missing, or if he's actually missing, or things like that. That was really the only kind of like, fan theory I kind of came up with, because I never really looked into that. But I'm with you. Like, why is he there?
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't it have been a new element that you guys added or something like that? Like a dark icon or something like that?
That's my point. Like, it's not that. I mean, I think it's cool that it's Ifrit. Like, I'm all for it. But in terms of like the logic of it, if Ifrit is sort of the being of Mythos, and he has the ability of taking all of the abilities, why does it start as fire? And maybe you're right. Maybe it's just because he already has the blessing of Phoenix, so he already ignites with fire.
That's the only thing I was pondering. But
like, maybe, or is there something to be said as well? There was like a graphic towards the end of the game, or like an image on the walls that suggests that Ifrit and Phoenix were once one being. Are they two pieces?
Oh yeah, because they can do that combination, and then he gets the wings and flying around. That might be something.
So it could be to do with their thinking might have been to do with the fact that fire is synonymous with destruction and at times with rebirth. So literally for the plan to work now, so it was once two beings split, one now into rebirth, one now into destruction.
I like that.
And
that's let's
cool.
go with that.
I think he's right. But although if anyone knows differently, whoever's like, if you're listening and you know differently, like, get in touch and let us know. Like, if there's something that we missed along the way and you have it like sussed out as to why Ifrit is a dominant of fire, do let us know. Or I should say a second dominant of fire. It's not surprising that there's a dominant of fire, but why is there a second one? Why specifically fire? But we mentioned that Clive takes on the mantle of Sid, right? Which leads us on to our boy, Sid, who is the dominant of Ramuh.
What is his full name? It's Sidolphus.
Sidolphus.
Like, it's not even Sid. It's like Sidolphus or something like that. Telemon.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it out there, right? I'm gonna put it out there, and I'm a big Final Fantasy fan. Love Final Fantasy VII and the Sid in that game, but I'm gonna put this out there. I think Sid in Final Fantasy 16 might be the best Sid in the entire series.
Dude, he might be cooler than Clive. Like, he was so awesome, man. And we go on record saying that right now. Is it Ralph Ineson?
Yeah, some of that. Yeah,
him doing the voice.
Fucking amazing.
He's gonna win. He's gonna win best voice acting
at the Game Awards.
For the Game Awards. Because he did that, and he also did what, Diablo 4. He was I forget the name in that one, but dude, that voice is just jaw-droppingly just.
It's so good, and I remember like in all the promos, I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. You know, like in all the trailers, like, yeah, I'm not really sure about that guy. He looks generic. I don't really get his voice. You kind of have to see the character in context, though, I think.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I like this guy.
In the early trailers, he's like, I think you're getting introduced to the hideout, and he's kind of like this guy walking you around. I'm like, that has nothing to do with what Sid actually is, the part he plays, how badass he actually is. I just want to know, what is he smoking, and where is he always pulling it out of? He's always got like a joint on him, and I'm just like, all right, Sid. All right.
Turns out none of this is actually happening, and he is hallucinating the whole game.
He's waking up in Final Fantasy 17.
And he's like, what? I love, it's a small detail, but it kind of plays into the themes of the world and how grounded they tried to make the world, even though it's very heavily rooted in magic. Like, I love that he takes out like a little crystal to light his, cigar or his joint or whatever he's smoking. Like, I just think that's a really cool detail that they put into this game. But yeah, Sid is a fucking cool character. He reminded me a little bit of I got Metal Gear Solid vibes from this character.
Oh, I can see a little bit of that.
I got a bit of a big boss wants to create outer heaven, where all the soldiers can live free from the constraints of the governments. That's what I suppose the other comparison, I guess, is X-Men, right?
Yeah, is he Xavier or is he
Magneto? Magneto. Yeah. Where are you going with this?
I don't know which one he is, but just in that he obviously wants to create a haven for the branded and create a world in which they can live freely.
Yeah, but why do you think it lands on him, though? Is it just because once upon a time he was on the other side and now he's kind of seeing the root of the evil? It's like, why? Like, where's the other people? I get that he's collecting everybody, but like, where are the other? Like, to me, there should have been more generals with Sid instead of just like there's a few key people at the hideout, but it's like I feel like there should have been a couple more. Obviously, he was the leader because he was the dominant, but it's like, where were the other guys that were trying to not live under this rule? Especially when all these kingdoms are dealing with different shit. Some of them are army powerhouses. The other ones are like religious zealots. It's like there's got to be a couple more people from each of these pieces of land that want to do something similar to what Sid was doing outside of the core group you get once Clive starts getting the ball rolling.
I think it's a fair point. I wonder if there's like in the mythology, and I imagine I feel like this game is going to get DLC of some kind, right? Like,
well, they said it wasn't, but I mean,
I feel like people
that kind of money. Yeah.
I feel like people will call out for like more of this.
What do you think it'd be? I was thinking, do you think it'd be prequel stuff? Because I'd like to see young Sid with what's the chick's name that we're gonna talk about?
Benedicta.
Yeah, I'd like to see that next story.
Actually.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
I think prequel stuff is probably the best way to do it for this game, actually, because with how it ends, I feel like because if you do anything that's sort of set with Clive, then it kind of has to be oh, and by the way, this happened before any of this. Like this happened somewhere along the way. Like
Yeah, it's like here's a thing he
that,
did in that time, in that couple of year time gap.
Yeah, it'd be a bit
And, like,
interjected, like,
and then it's like,
I mean,
okay, but how come that
unless
was never mentioned?
Unless they Phoenix resurrect them. I mean, we never
right.
know
I mean,
how
yeah,
that's
who
gonna
knows,
happen.
Yeah.
or whatever. Like maybe the ending isn't as clear as it's suggested either. Like maybe it's not. Maybe that's not actually what happened. But
Could do
but
one
yeah,
on
no,
Leviathan, actually.
well,
Could do if you're doing a prequel, you could do a prequel called Leviathan: The Lost, and you play as Leviathan and
That'd
see what
be
happened.
Awesome.
I think that would be amazing. But I do think having Sid involved in there somewhere and explaining a little bit more of his backstory would be great because, like, he is, for how little he's actually in the game, he's like one of the big talking points of the game.
Yeah. Well, did they ever mention, and maybe I missed it, who the mother of his daughter is?
I don't know.
I don't.
Because she just kind of popped up out of nowhere, and I thought I'm like, okay, well, where's this coming from, and what's the point?
Yeah,
and then they don't really get into that relationship at all. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it was cool when he was leaving her these things behind, and it's cool that her and Clive kind of got this relationship going as like kind of like he's not like kind of mentoring her and helping out. But it's like, well, where did this come from?
Yeah. What did you guys think of Mid as sort of an extension of Sid?
I don't know. She's cool, I guess, but I just thought it was kind of useless. I mean, that character could have been anybody else, so I don't know why it was made. That's what I'm saying. I didn't get why it had to be Sid's kid. If you're not even going to tell me what their relationship was, that could have been any engineer that arrived at the hideout that you helped with. I don't know why it had to particularly be related to him.
Sure.
I think
if
not that I'm mad at it, but I just didn't get it.
Yeah, I think if they had Mid as like much younger in the first hideout, that hideout gets destroyed. Mid goes off to study, and then comes back much older. And I think then you kind of, because I was saying, like, she comes in, she's all joyful and hopping around. I'm like, who the hell is this person? Am I supposed to know who this is?
I think that would have not only sold the arc a little bit better, but it also would have made the time jump feel like an actual time jump, because not much changes in the 5 years, except that there's a new hideout built. But if you go around the world, like, nothing has changed. Like, everything is still exactly as it was. So having a character who physically ages in that kind of time, that actually would have not only helped the character, but also just helped the feeling of, oh, right, time has passed.
Yeah, it would have been cool if you like saw her like kind of hiding in Sid's room or something, and then when it was all going down, she's scared and someone like kind of saves her, and you kind of see this girl, you're like, oh, who's that? And then the time jump, and you're like, oh, that was the girl that did whatever. And it's like, but for her to just come skipping in there, I was just like, this feels way forced, and I didn't care for it.
Yeah,
I think as well they could have done, if they had her as a kid, you could have then had an interaction between Sid and Mid, which would have been nice as well, because then the loss would have been more, because that moment when Sid dies is a great moment. But I also forgot I really forgot he had a kid, because I think he does mention it once, but I forgot he has a kid. And I think if you had that interaction as well, it would solidify that there's a lot more being lost here than just Sid.
Right.
Like just a friend or a mentor.
I found his death very impactful and surprising, genuinely surprising, because I thought he was going to stick around a lot longer. So I really didn't see it coming. I mean, it's not surprising that the mentor figure dies. Like, that happens in, you name it, media. The mentor dying is not surprising. But to die so early in the story, at a point where you think you're building up to something, is like, this story is only starting. This is actually, you've just finished the tutorial, actually. This story is only beginning. In what is a very pivotal cutscene that sets up the rest of the game. Obviously introducing the villain and revealing Joshua is still around, and like so much happens around the time where Sid dies. But he also gets bonus points for me because I am a big fan of Ramuh. Ramuh
but he's been always one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's great. I
was gonna ask you guys, now that you bring that up, when you guys were doing the combat, what 3 icons did you guys have locked in? Because I was always using Phoenix and Ramuh.
Oh, so like by the time you have them all, which 3?
Yeah. What elements were you guys using for your most?
100% Ramuh.
Dude, those electrical attacks were just so
Anytime
Awesome. Yeah.
lightning abilities, like in general, like just all the time, wherever I can. Because even like playing like 7 remake, I'd always put the lightning elemental on Tifa, and suddenly every punch she does is just unbelievable. So wherever I can
Yeah.
put lightning into my characters, that's what I do.
Yeah, as soon as that one opened up, I was like maxed out, and I definitely used that one throughout the whole game as soon as I had it.
So I think by the end, I was using Ramuh, Shiva, and I used those two the most. I think Phoenix as well.
Yeah, that fire attack that he does, dude, was just that AOE thing that he did was just wiping people out.
Yeah. It's sick. Eric, which tree were you using?
Phoenix throughout the whole thing. I tried to use some of Ifrit's abilities. I didn't really like them. I preferred Phoenix's, especially that one where you are just doing like a spin attack or just fucking launching people with your feathers.
Yeah, that was the best.
Ramuh for a good while.
Yeah.
Titan for a good while, but by the time I had all of them, it was Phoenix, Shiva, and Odin.
Oh,
nice. Yeah,
okay.
I did Phoenix, Ramuh, and then I did a split between, because I love that you could split the abilities at the end.
Yes.
You could put certain people. So at the end, I did Titan with Shiva with I think I was using her Ice Age Fury. I used that a lot.
I think I mixed in Bahamut's is it called Giga Flare or Mega Flare?
Yeah,
it's the ability where he just gets the wings, you float around for a bit, dodge the attacks, and build up your meter, and then it just rains hell down on. And I found that very useful when there was like lots of enemies on screen to like just build that up and then wipe them out.
excellent.
But yeah, anything else we want to say on Sid before we move on to someone that you didn't mention, Craig, which was Benedicta?
I don't think I have nothing else on Sid. He did his part perfectly well. I'd arguably say, I mean, he did die, but it's like he's going to be the most memorable character. I mean, outside of Clive himself, like I think Sid almost shadowed him, in my opinion, or overshadowed him, because he was just so cool. Like you're saying, like, these Metal Gear vibes, and he's just awesome to listen to. Every scene he was in, you're just like, all right, what's he gonna say?
He's so charismatic and charming, but I also, there's a scene, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the game early on, and it's kind of just sums up his attitude, which is like he's so helpful to Clive when Clive is so clearly lost. And there's the scene where they save Gav at the edge of like a waterfall, right? And like Gav was literally hanging off, and Clive gets him up. And at this point, Clive is convinced that he killed Joshua, and he doesn't know what to make of it. And Sid kind of gives a bit of hope to him by saying, "Look, I saw another fire guy too. It wasn't like you weren't dreaming it. I saw him. So you got to go figure out who he is, right? You promised your brother you'd find your brother's killer." So go find him, and if he didn't kill him, kill yourself. But he says it so nonchalantly, and just like gives him, at this point where Clive is hopeless, gives him a sense of purpose. Like, you owe it to yourself now to find out, did you really do it? Or is there more to this?
Right.
And I just thought, like, that's what a great character to like.
Perfect, man. Perfect character.
Yeah, and I think they killed him off the right point. They killed him off at a point where you don't want him to die. So now you miss him and you love him. He didn't get to a point where he lost his purpose or kind of became boring or pushed to the side. So they took him out at the right point as well, that he leaves that impact for the rest of the game.
Yeah, especially because you almost thought he died like a couple other times. There's a few times when he gets smacked around and you're like, oh, is this it? And then he keeps going. You're like, okay, cool. He's got a little more gas in the tank.
Well, speaking of characters getting killed off pretty early, Benedicta, who also, I think, makes quite an impact, even though she's not in a huge portion of the game, but her character has an important arc to play on even other characters. Because, so even when she does leave the story, her death becomes the motivation of other characters like Kupka and stuff, So, what do we think of Benedicta, who is the dominant of Garuda?
Well, she's almost the opposite to Sid. Because Sid is calm and charismatic and composed, and he's fighting for a good purpose. And when he dies, his death inspires people to do good. But when Benedicta is fucking crazy, and she's murdering everybody, and she loves torture and torment, and when she dies, she inspires more torment and more death and more destruction. So she's almost the opposite. So there's that And they actually had a thing as well, that nice little history moment. So that she was very cool, and like Sid, I'm like, oh, I wish she was in it more. But
Yeah, she's
also
great.
they did take her at the right time, because then she doesn't get ruined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's got a really nice scene when they're doing the in the very beginning of the game when that battle with all the soldiers is going on, and she's kind of dominating the war room and kind of throwing people back and forth. I thought she was a perfect entry villain, because you knew she wasn't going to be the end boss or the last two bosses, but she was perfect. Her whole motivation, like you were saying, she was kind of the yin to his yang with Sid, and I thought it was perfect, because when she talks about her ideology, she's thinking she's 100% right. She's like, Sid, why? This is your last chance. Come back with us so we can do it this way. And Sid, at this point, she's like, dude, you are so fucking lost and down this rabbit hole with these other ideas that you have going on, and this war that's happening, that you can't even see that you're lost. And at the end, when she loses her icon, and you can just see how that instantly just snaps her, and she's like, I don't want to be powerless. The whole goal was to never feel weak ever again. And then when she senses that again, it was just like, I don't want to say heartbreaking, because like you don't have love for her, but you can see this very scared little girl who just had her whole fucking her world ripped out from her when Clive, because that's the first one you realize you can pull power from, right?
Yeah,
you grab hers. So not only was she important to Clive's understanding and bringing on the mythos, but you just see this whole person's reality just fade before them, and it was pretty dark at first to realize that was even a possibility.
Yeah. No, I absolutely like, as kind of, it's like she's a femme fatale, right? And she's kind of
very
vile and manipulative in the beginning, and all
hot as fuck,
and very hot. But I absolutely empathized with her in that moment in the forest where she felt,
dude, that was depressing,
powerless. And I was like, this one sequence is directed so incredibly well, and at a point where a couple of guys like kill the people around her, and there's nothing she can do, and they're nobodies. They're not important. They're not like in that moment, if she didn't get her power back and go kind of AWOL and crazy, if she had died in that moment, she would have been killed by random enemy number 2 in the forest, and no one would ever have found her body. Like, it would have been a meaningless, cruel death that's like
forgotten.
And so she had gone from like sort of a god style character who had so much power to suddenly being terrified. And I thought it was like perfect. It spoke to like her greatest fear in life, which was like, because I felt like, as well, because Sid often like hints at things like, you once believed what I believed, like you weren't always like this. And I feel like half of her character is a facade as a survival technique, like that she just does what she can to stay on top and stay in power, keep the right people happy so that she can live a comfortable life. I'm not sure she fully believes the actions she's taking.
But she was also willing to die for the cause. You know what I mean? It wasn't just it wasn't like the Queen with Clive, like Clive's mom. It wasn't just, hey, I'm going to keep fucking people for power and and be comfy and raise my heir. She's willing to go out on the battlefield and handle it because she knew she was capable. And then once she loses all that, she's just like, when her right hand guy has to grab her and get her out of there. You know what I mean? She didn't even have the will to like walk. And I'm like, dude, she lost it all and got hit hard. Yeah. So I think out of everybody, man, I think maybe deservingly so, but I think she got it the worst.
Yeah. And then when she does get that power boost and go crazy,
dude, that was awesome. She went Super Saiyan
love that
hard.
sequence. It's so good. You're walking through the winds. It's nuts. You finally turn into Ifrit for like the first time.
That might be one of my favorite parts of the game, actually.
I think it's great. I think like it's one of the big highlights of the game. And even like I love that first fight. As in the first, I know the beginning of the game you have Phoenix and Ifrit, but like this was the first proper like one-on-one icon battle between Ifrit and Garuda.
Garuda, that's what I was looking up. I'm like, I always forget that her icon's name, so I had to look it up.
Yeah, because it's not one of the more popular like summons in Final Fantasy lore, I guess, but.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying, and I was reading these things like where does Garuda even come from? And I'm not really familiar with her because I never played like FF3 and 4 a lot to remember it. But I guess Garuda is in a couple Final Fantasies, right?
Somewhere along the way. I don't know where actually.
14. I couldn't tell you what game it's in.
She's in 14, and
is that the MMO?
That's the MMO one. And I noticed she also, with the Royal Edition of 15, there's like a secret mission you get to do, which somehow ties into 14, and then you get Garuda by the end of it. And so
Oh.
I'm assuming Garuda is in a few other ones as well.
I'd imagine you'd have to be, because it'd be kind of cool if they made up a new summon for the game, which I thought Garuda was, but it's kind of cool that they're all in the lore of Final Fantasy history.
Yeah.
Probably the best. Well, I mean, I've only seen one other design for Garuda. That was from 15, but out of the two I've seen, it's the best design for Garuda.
That's a really cool character. I have to say, though, in terms of like the abilities, I only used Garuda up until I had other abilities to replace it, and I never went back. But I'd love to know.
What did she do? She did like a thorn whip or something like that, and
you could like drag stuff to you, couldn't you? And then you could there was like the rapid claw attack and stuff. But I don't know. I'd love to hear from someone, like if there's someone who's like, no, Garuda was my icon the whole way through. Like I'd love to talk to that person.
Well, see, I feel like Garuda's abilities are more for I don't want to say an advanced player, but like if you're going to compare it to Devil May Cry, like somebody that's good that's doing constant combos, I feel like her power is made to do those quick where my play style, like, and I think yours as well, is doing like the electric bolts, the fire bolts, where hers I think is a very more melee style. So if you are into that faster type of that combat, that's what she would be. But I just wasn't playing like that. I was more like blasted with magic, stay in the back, shoot fireballs and stuff. So, but yeah, I could see her being a really cool one. It wasn't for me.
I think her attacks, especially that really fast clawing one, is for building up that kind of stagger bar.
Yeah.
So you'd stagger them with Garuda, and then you would swap to, let's say, Titan to do all the damage or something. I think that's what they were thinking. But yeah, I'm more like, no, I want to do damage. Fuck that stagger thing. So give me all that fire and the rocks and anything else but Garuda.
She is one of the stronger female characters in the game, I would say. But another very prominent female character in Final Fantasy 16 is, of course, Jill, who is the dominant of Shiva, one of your longtime companions, Clive's childhood friend. So what do we think of Shiva, or Jill, I should say? I'm going to come to you first, Craig, because you interjected already with, she's an awesome character. Tell us why.
Well, I was reading a bunch of things, and people were like, I forget what the comment was, but they were like, oh, what another standard typical second lead female that has to follow the man. And I don't want to get into politics or anything like that with it, but I was completely on the opposite with that. I'm like, dude, Jill is so awesome. When you first meet her as a kid, right? She's very heartwarming. And is she a ward? I forget why she's even in this castle and why she's best friends with the princes. Her status, what was it?
She's not from that nation, is she? She's been adopted and looked after, but she's
the north.
She's just There was like a war, I think, a long time ago with her nation, but they took her, and in other kingdoms,
she's like Theon Greyjoy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they actually like looked after her. They took her in and treated her as one of their own, as opposed
to so did Ned Stark.
Right.
But, we also have it to him. Yeah. But so Jill, when she keeps going in, and you find out later, because I think Clive thought she might have been dead or something like that, or she definitely didn't know he was still alive. And then you realize, because I think this is when you get more introduced to the I forget what country they're from, but the religious zealots, and you find out that they think of these things as abominations. But I believe the first battle is with her and Titan, and you see how huge Titan is and how petite and delicate Shiva is, but she still does a nice battle scene. And then at the end, when it's done, they've got her like chained up and walking around with her, and Clive, that doesn't sit right with them, and he wants to save her, and you find out that it's her, and you can tell as the player that looks like an older version of Jill when I met her as a kid. So once you saw that, you're like, oh shit, she's a dominant, she's got an icon, I got to get her the hell out of here. Then you do that badass battle to get her out of that kind of canyon that you're in, and then her story goes on from there. And so the introduction to Jill as a dominant, I thought that was even a cool thing, that you're going, well, why is Titan a king? Why is he in the war room? But Shiva is chained and essentially tortured, I guess.
Yeah.
So her beginning arch of her story for me was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Because no other dominant is like that. No other dominant is getting their ass beat and tortured. Where I'm like, but why is she?
Yeah. Because I think that then just through her and Titan, even that's that awesome battle sequence.
That was so badass.
Titan's massive. He's a fucking moving mountain, crushing people with every step. Shiva is smaller than him, but still standing her own because she's fucking powerful out of it. And with that as well, you are seeing you are introduced to how different societies treat each other. So you have like the Dalmekian Republic call upon Titan as he's the nuke. All right, we're going to use him. We're going to use this big powerful weapon, and he kind of has like leverage with them because he knows he's so powerful. And then yes, with the Iron Kingdom, she's chained and she's just used as like, yeah, you go out and use your power. Okay, we're done. Chain you, beat you, and stuff. And so it is cool in that regard. And then seeing her arc, you have her freed. She's quite quiet. She's quite like unsure of herself, and then she gains her strength again.
Yes.
And then leads you into the Iron Kingdom temple of that crystal, and just freaking lays waste to everybody.
Oh,
Just
dude, when she stands up to the, what was he, the not a patriarch, like the high priest or whatever,
yeah.
and she gives her words. I'm like, dude, you get it, girl. That's why I didn't get anybody's conversation when they were saying she wasn't a powerful girl. Obviously, we like Benedicta as being a very outspoken, strong woman,
yes.
but I'm like that scene alone is like you were saying, Eric, is a completely pivotal point of her completely finding her confidence and becoming one of the star characters. So I absolutely love Jill.
But there's like even the fact that the amount that she withdrew for the amount of years she spent with the Iron Kingdom, that strength alone to have kept going and then still to find the strength to face her oppressors, like that's
well, yeah, because when you go back to that castle and she's crawling through and she knows all the ways and she's meeting up with the maids and she meets up with the one person that kind of remembers her and she's like, you know, I love you, sister, and we'll see each other again eventually. And I'm like, so yeah, that's probably what, a decade of her going through that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love Jill. She was the Tifa of the game and for me a favorite.
That's why I used her. Then when I got her dominant power, I was like, right, I got to use Shiva because she's fucking awesome and she's such an important character to Clive as well. So it just felt natural for Clive to hold on to that power as well.
Yeah.
So that's why then I held on to Shiva.
She was definitely like a motivation for him for sure.
Absolutely.
Plus Shiva is like just one of the OG summons, you know, like Shiva's badass. You can't do Final Fantasy without Shiva, you know what I mean?
No.
You just can't. I love the role Jill plays in the story. I love her intro, as you said, is fucking amazing. And like the battle between her and Titan. The fact that the zealots who see her as an abomination but are willing to kill children in order to keep her in line. And they don't see like the hypocrisy of their actions. Like you could go on for ages just even thinking about that as a theme on its own. And that's only a little subplot of the game. But like that on its own is like what is wrong with these people? You know what I mean? And they're still using the crystal, but they also think anyone who's born innately able to is a monster. You know, like it's so wild the way they think. It's an interesting contradiction. I think where some of the criticisms come from for Jill is, and this is not to bash the voice actor, but I think because the voice actor has such a delicate voice, right? I think people see that as weakness. Now, I don't. But because I also think that people would see a character like Yuna, who's a very...
I was just going to bring up Yuna, man. Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
and Yuna is one of the strongest Final Fantasy characters, video game characters, ever.
Yeah, with the softest voice.
Right? Her strength is... Yeah, right? Like, she's really soft-spoken. She's really nice all the time. She's not like a Tomb Raider character who does flips and, well, let's play 10-2. But... Yeah. But, you know, at the heart of her, she's just a really good person. And that's her strength. And I feel like a lot of people think that Jill is not a strong female because, yeah, she's not like Benedicta, where she's like really outspoken and super confident and like would kill anyone in an instant kind of thing. It's like, because that's not who Jill is. Jill is a good person.
She's been raised for the last 10 years. You know what I mean? She can't be outspoken. So it's like, where are you going to find your inner voice if you can't talk?
Yeah. And she has like allowed herself, because she could kill those guys in an instant. She has allowed herself to be a slave to protect innocent children. Like, that's self-sacrifice is what that is. Like, so she's an incredibly strong character. I do think that after the Iron Kingdom sequence, she falls out of the story a little bit. Like, she's still there, but she doesn't get as many she doesn't get as much to do after that point, which is kind of a shame. But she's not a weak character.
By any means.
By any
Yeah.
means. Absolutely not. I don't know if any of the characters are inherently weak characters. But one character who's definitely not is Kupka,
Oh,
who we
Hugo!
mentioned. Well, Hugo, we mentioned.
Hugo!
We mentioned because Shiva fights Titan, right? So the big boy, Kupka. And we were saying as well, Benedicta plays a big role in the story, and it's that when she's dead, you know, his whole quest becomes a quest for revenge. I was very much reminded of, I don't know, have you ever watched the CW show Arrow?
Oh, I watched Arrow for a long time. I did the whole
Right.
Arrowverse for as long as I
I-
could.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you might, right?
Yeah.
He reminded me of Deathstroke. Season 2
Oh,
Deathstroke.
played by Manu Bennett.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he reminded me of, you took my love from me, so
Yeah.
I'm going to make your world suffer.
Yep.
That's what he reminded me of. He reminded me of like a really good Arrowverse villain.
Well, I have a question of going, because he is so enthralled with Benedicta and his motivation is 100% driven by the loss of her. But when did she ever have who was she with? Because isn't she with him and the Barnabas, or was that the other is that the villain looking
Yeah, I have a
like that?
theory.
I
but
wasn't sure exactly what that was.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, you're obviously led to believe that she is playing around with lots of different people, including Barnabas. But I think there's another key sequence of Barnabas where, you know, he's faced with Ultima, and Ultima
Right.
is taking very different forms in the one cutscene. One of them
Right.
being Benedicta. That actually, I think that shines a bit of light on the scene earlier. In that, no, she wasn't with Barnabas at all.
Okay, and that's what I was thinking. So, but so when are these two ever together? I mean, aren't they ruling two different nations that are? I mean, like Barnabas is over here, and isn't she fighting over here? So, like, when his whole plan is like, I need this to be my future queen. It looked to me more like it was a hookup that they were even trying to kiss behind closed doors. So it didn't seem like this relationship was ever public. So I was just curious about why it was so important to him.
It's a good point.
Because clearly he could have anybody he wanted, but this was the woman in his life that he was infatuated with.
Well, maybe it was the case of the fact he could have any woman he wanted, and he couldn't have Benedicta.
Right.
So that made it was like that kind of like
The forbidden fruit, right?
Forbidden fruit, thank you. And so maybe that's why he wanted her.
But that was it, though. He did have her. They were making out. They were hooking up. So it wasn't like they just couldn't get married. I mean, why are they going behind guards' backs in hallways for her to jump on him and start talking to him? And it almost seemed like she was using him, but he was just so into it that he was just willing to die for her, I guess.
Are we all on the same page that like he was way more into her than she was into him?
Very.
If the role was reversed and he was the one that died and someone sent his head in a box to her, do we at all believe she would like tear the world down in his name? For the next 5 years? Absolutely not.
She probably would have asked, why are you bringing me this head in the box?
Yeah. She's like, oh, it was one of my hookups.
Yeah, because she's into the ideology and the future of the realm, where he was, I'm a self-made millionaire, because wasn't he a peasant that turned into like this high noble, you know what I mean? And he's like, this is just my final goal, marry her and then rule.
Well, I think when he realized the power that he had being the dominant of Titan, he realized as well then that he had political leverage.
Yeah, which was
awesome. Like, I could level this place, like just give me what I want. And like you can even see like the characters around that table, even at the beginning and the meeting, they're real tiptoeing around him. They're really trying to keep him in check. Like there's the older dude with the gray beard. I can't remember his name.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Like he's clearly supposed to be the leader, but there's nothing about him that suggests he's in charge. Like it felt like like the Dark Knight Rises, where Bane is supposed to be working for Mr. Daggett, and he puts the hand on his shoulder and is like, "Do you feel in charge?"
Yeah.
Kupka's like Bane,
Yeah, definitely. And and it's cool because I mean there's certain ways you can go when you play this Titan character. It could have been the skinniest guy in the room that turns into the biggest icon. Right. I love that this guy was just a brick shit house, and he was huge regardless walking around. And dude, I would argue that is my favorite fight of the game. The whole battle between Clive and Hugo Kupka. I always said his name right. I kept saying like the Mughals. Kupka.
Hey, Kupo.
I thought that was one of the best battle scenes, and that was my favorite arc between him and the villain. Was him and those two together.
It did feel like if this is a TV show, that like there's a season focused on their rivalry, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
the Deathstroke season.
Yes, it's
pretty much
Deathstroke season, and I do love when Clive cut off Kupka's arms.
Dude, I did not see that coming amazing. At all.
I was like, this is fantastic.
What do they strap on him, like metal gauntlets, and he's trying to eat food and he can't do it?
Yeah, but like, because that's his strength. You know what I mean? Like Benedicta, all her strength came from the fact that she had those powers, so she felt super confident and powerful. Kupka, it's his fists. Like, he will bash you to death. He's a physical being, and when his arms are taken from him, it's not just a physical ailment. It's actually like, I have literally taken your strength away. The only way for you to fight now is to turn into a dominant, but that doesn't always end well. So, because you'll level everything around you if you even just turn. Never mind. So
I think his battle was one of the few that I think I actually died on, because there was a point where when he drops down and you guys drop below, and he does that move that he kept doing, that big AoE rock circle. I think that was the first time like I died in the game. I was like, oh shit. So for me, I thought he was not only one of the best boss fights, but one of the most interesting characters. Did you guys die at all? Who beat your ass the most besides maybe the final boss?
Well, I died on Titan.
Titan for sure got me, and I was like, okay.
I'm trying to think, who did I find the hardest or most difficult? Like, who did I really get stuck with? And I can't remember. I think I might have died on Odin as well. But I can't remember.
Odin was good. Odin was good shit.
I think it was for me. I think I died twice on the Chocobo that was able to call meteors. He's like a side hunt. That's the guy that killed me twice.
that fucker.
There was one. Now that you bring that up, I was walking. Is it like a goblin? The first hunt you run into when you're coming around like that prairie, and then there's like that goblin, and it pops up. It's like, oh, you can start doing hunts now. I was like, oh, cool. Right. He did a move, and he never did it again after I fought him. But it just knocked me out in one hit, and I was like, what is this? So I was like, oh, these hunts are gonna be a pain in my ass. And then I was like, oh, I think I just got hit by the wrong move at the wrong time.
I have to ask you, because I'm asking everyone who's played the game. Have you found a Tonberry in the game?
Dude, it's been so long. I don't think I did.
I did not find a Tonberry, and I'm convinced there has to be one in there somewhere.
Yeah,
right? There has to be a Tonberry in there.
I think there was a shop or something called the something Tonberry in one of the places.
They kind of did like an Easter egg. Reference?
Okay. Yeah, I think it was an Easter egg.
It's coming into DLC. What did you guys think of the fight between Ifrit and Titan? Then I've seen online the discussion. A lot of people like that's like their highlight of the game. In particular for the music, people seem to like really fucking dig the music.
Yeah, but we haven't really hit the music at all. But you got to remember, on all these fights, when you're fighting all these icons, they all have their own soundtrack, which is just, I mean, no pun intended, just fire when you're listening to these things playing them. And I would say that the Titan one for sure, like when you're running up his arms, because when they started moving forward, the icons started absorbing more of the crystals, so they almost got like an icon plus form. And when you see the Titan turn into his and he just shoots up, I was like, dude, this is beyond epic. Like, epic doesn't describe it. It was epic with the first time I fought him. This is Titan epic. So I don't know. I absolutely love that battle.
What about you, Eric?
I love the design, the big giant colossus, because to me it was like Ifrit looked like Godzilla on fire to me. So I'm Godzilla running towards this like giant mountain with these like stone tentacles coming at me. And I thought, so the design was really cool, and I thought the cinematic of the combat was really cool. But I was actually turned off by the music. I was a little bit like, oh, yeah, I thought the music came out of no. It was like, if this is Devil May Cry, this music is fucking brilliant. But with all the other more orchestral style music, I was like, oh, this is a really weird one. And so I was like, going through it, hearing this like more kind of Devil May Cry music, thinking to myself, it would almost be better if they had the Apocalypse Noctis music from 15, which is the music that's playing when you're fighting Titan. And I was like,
Right.
that would almost work better here. But I still love the design and the cinematic of going from the different tentacle to tentacle and stuff. So I did like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of a mix of the two. Where I think the fight cinematically is probably the best fight in the game. And it's one of the big high points. And this could have easily been a final boss fight in any other game. Like, like and this is only like the midpoint maybe, but like, it's like, fucking hell, this is ridiculous. But I also, I wasn't digging the music, but I know that me and Eric,
I don't know, I loved it.
me and Eric are definitely in the minority there.
Minority,
like, I know people, but I did feel it was like strangely out of place. But supposedly, if you know the composer's work too, it helps better. There was I was listening to the Easy Allies podcast, and the guys on that were saying that if you played Final Fantasy 14 and if you fought Titan in Final Fantasy 14, you would recognize that this music is a rendition.
See, that's cool. I like that.
Music.
Oh,
so with
okay.
that bit of information, like, that is cool. And I think if I'd played that, I would just have that moment of going, oh, what a cool callback, But
it's interesting that it seems that a lot of things are kind of linked to Final Fantasy 14. We did the Garuda, you said there was a side quest with her, and now there's music for Titan, and it's weird because that's the one. I mean, it's got its millions, 100 millions of players, but it's like if you're a core FF player, that's kind of, unless you're an MMO player, that's kind of the one most people skip.
Right.
So
if you're only playing
there's so many connections that I think that's kind of interesting.
I suppose with the developers behind it makes sense, right? Like, it's the same team, so with that,
it makes sense the more I think about it. It's just interesting that there's so many connections between the two.
But this whole story kicks off really with the death or supposed death of a poor young Joshua. Poor Joshua, our baby boy. Come on, what the hell? Especially when he's being voice acted by the guy who does Hugo from Plague Tale. Amicia.
Great game.
So I want to look after that guy. I don't want him to die. I want to take care of this boy.
Not on my watch.
So what did we think of Joshua's character, who plays a much bigger role? I mean, his role was pivotal from the get-go, even if he didn't come back. But then he does come back, and he plays even more of a role. But yeah, what do you guys think of Joshua? Start with you, Craig.
I didn't care for the young version of him. Do you guys watch Dragon Prince at all on Netflix?
Yes.
Okay, so he did kind of remind me of the Prince there, where he's young and he may not know exactly what he's doing, but he knows what he's there for. He does know his cause and his purpose, and he's willing to do it, albeit scared, and he wants his brother to help him. So it kind of had a Dragon Prince vibe for me there.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't love the kid's like, I don't really care for that voice when he was doing it in the game as a young kid, but as soon as he gets older, and I don't know about you guys, but I had this suspicion that the guy walking around in the hood was going to be Josh, and so I was like,
at some point,
okay, let's see where this is going. So as soon as he's revealed, and then he looks completely badass. I love the way Joshua looked. He's infected by, I forget what the crystal curse is called, unless that's just what it's called, but he's spitting up the blood. I love that he's got like his handmaiden that's constantly with him. I love that there's certain points of this game where like Clive and what's the uncle's name when he gets the ship?
Byron.
Byron, and you guys go to that desert town and they just happen to be there at the same time. I love kind of like this. It's like, are we almost gonna meet up? Are we almost gonna meet up? Are we almost gonna see who's who? And Clive's got like this suspicion that like, I know he's here. I can feel him. He's like, he might be dead, man. He's like, no, he's here. So, and then once that happens, and they have the big fight scene, and he puts Ultima. I think he puts him into his heart. Is that what he did?
Right.
Yeah. I was like, dude, that is such a cool scene. And then Clive like half remembers it, and he's like, no, I know he's here. So, and then from there we can keep talking about it. But yeah, his kind of, cloak and dagger, shadowy traveling, one step behind him, one step forward. Yeah. I thought was really cool. And then once he was fully integrated into the story, I was like, let's go.
That was one of the things that really like kept me playing, like wanting to get home, to keep playing and get through the side quest, to get to the next. Because I was like, I want to catch up with Joshua because I think he's got the answers and I want to know. I want to know what's happening. So every time we were getting close and he'd go again, it really reminded me of like a TV show where it's like, oh man, I can't wait for the next episode because I want to see, do we finally get some answers, you know? Eric, what did you think of Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, I yes, like that element of like, okay, because every time you see Joshua, they always give that little bit more of a hint of, okay, they know more. They're letting on a little bit more now and stuff. And so, and a big part for me was wanting to find him to know what's going to happen to him because Ultima is in his heart, which then proved to not actually do anything for like the whole game.
We'll get there.
But then actually having him with you was really nice, and seeing all of his different interactions with like Dion and with the woman that was traveling with him, which I loved her. I thought she was so cool.
She was cool too.
She was
awesome.
Yeah.
I think I really liked him. But again, kind of when he joins you, he does less, which I thought was weird. He does less and then more, and then kind of like a lot more less, and then a lot more. So there was like a weird balancing act that they had to do there. But I was very intrigued by his story and his journey, and that was kind of a big point to keep playing.
Yeah, I really like the character. I still don't fully understand. Well, I guess he's Phoenix, right? So because I was like, how is he alive? And like at some point, are they going to address that? Not so much how is he alive, because you get it. You're like, well, he's Phoenix. He fucking healed. Like he just healed himself. But why is Clive not asking him how is he alive? And no, like, why he just sort of accepts that, oh, you're alive. But he has spent years and years looking for his killer. Like this has been his whole goal. So at no point is there a cutscene where Clive is like, Joshua, how are you here? Like, I could have sworn I put my fist right through your chest and like fatality'd you.
Yeah, you're the reason he's been going insane for the last decade.
Yeah, like I have literally, I thought about ending myself over this. Like, how are you alive and why didn't you tell me? Like, yeah. I feel like it's missing that conversation. We can all put two and two together as to why Joshua survived that night. But I feel like there needed to be a conversation about it, and for Joshua to go, listen, I forgive you for what happened, and I know it wasn't you. The only other thing that confused me was, obviously, it got to a point where you could see the hooded figure, and it was when the hooded figure started talking, right? But he hasn't revealed his hood yet. You're like, I think that's Joshua. Is it Joshua? But what confused me then was at the very beginning of the game, Clive saw that same hooded figure before he went crazy and turned into Ifrit. So it's like, did Ultima show him a vision of the future?
Yeah, I didn't get that at all either. I was hoping one of you could explain that to me.
Yeah, so it's like, how did he look like what Joshua is going to look like eventually? It hasn't happened yet. So I don't know.
That's the part that threw me off as well. I was like, wait, so, because again, even when he battles himself, like a lot of this stuff isn't kind of like adding up. So yeah, the original figure, unless he was just having a vision himself of like the prophecy. I don't know if they ever mentioned it as like a prophecy or anything like that of him coming back or anything, but yeah, I was confused as well. I was like, how did he see this if it's not even happened yet? And at this point, I don't think Ultima is meddling around in this.
Like, it's clearly misdirection, right? It's clearly so that when you see the hooded figure later, you're caught up in who is this guy and what did they do, and that you will hopefully not think it's Joshua, because they've ruled it out. They went, well, you killed Joshua and you saw that guy at the same time, so it can't be Joshua. But it's like, well, it is, and we're not fooled. We know it is. So yeah, you're not pulling the wool over our eyes. So why did he see that hooded figure that night?
Yeah,
I don't know. It has to be Ultima, right? That it's literally the only explanation I can come up with, being a figure who could probably bend space and time and just warp with your head that way. But Eric, what do you think?
I actually kind of forgot about that he did see Joshua at the start of the game.
That's pivotal. It's fucking pivotal.
Yeah, I know. Forgot about that.
Joshua.
Okay, so we don't know, really, do we?
It's probably Ultima, and I suppose maybe Ultima probably is able to bend space and time to his will, so he probably was able to see what Joshua looked like, and then made Clive see old Joshua so that anytime he would see hooded Joshua, he'd be forced to get closer to him, because the closer they are together, the closer they are to being united and forming that version that Ultima needs.
Well, yeah, but is it one of the things that he's Ultima's trying to do to Clive is like detach him from the world? So if he starts seeing this hooded figure, just to give him like a purpose of going, oh, this is what's killed me. This is what's, I got to start chasing this. It gives him like this anger and this revenge. It separates him from the rest of the world.
Right.
So it's giving him this quest that he has to go do that's slowly turning him away from other people. I guess maybe that could be.
I think you're onto something. I
Yeah,
think you're
maybe.
onto something. I think that could be it. I think it's like an instilled goal in him to set him on the path that he ends up on, which is, of course, what happens, really. And I suppose the thing that's not accounted for is that Sid interrupts that. Sid interrupts that process and throws a spanner into the works and, like, starts trying to put Clive onto a different path. And had Sid never,
Sid, he would have been.
Had Sid never met Clive, like, Clive might have never ever given up on that goal and might have just walked straight into Ultima's hands, essentially. But one of the characters that Joshua pairs the party up with in a big way is Dion, who is the dominant of Bahamut. Bahamut? How is it pronounced?
Yeah.
That's another one of those ones.
I say Bahamut.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know, some people say like Behemoth or something like that.
Yeah. So I think Dion is one of my favorite characters in the entire game.
With the worst name.
With the worst name.
Like it's so not fantasy at all.
I think
like it's so not medieval. It's just so Dion.
When I look at the characters that are in here, I am surprised they didn't give the name Dion to Barnabas, only because Dion is an anagram for Odin, and that would have been a cool.
Oh, that would have been sick.
When I look at them right beside each other, I'm just like, why didn't you swap them? But anyway, as it stands, I think one of the cutscenes in the game where Dion, like when you finally understand why Dion went crazy and started attacking, where he accidentally kills his own father, is just fucking incredible.
Dude, that spear throw.
It's so good. And that little kid, I wanted to fucking kill him too. You know, that little brat, that little fucker.
Who has another dumb name? His name's not even Oliver. It's like Olivier.
Olivier, is it? Is it Olivier?
Yeah, they went for like the French version. Yeah, that kid and his mother, like, throw all the spears.
Oh my god, I'd love to talk about her more in like part 2, but she has to be like one of the most evil characters in Final Fantasy history. She is twisted. Yeah, but anyway,
she's so self-concerned with her own well-being.
Yeah,
but even like Dion's intro, which is that battle between. So yet again, you had the intro of Titan and Shiva is a battle, and then the intro of Bahamut and Odin is also another awesome epic battle, and that was really cool because it was the light versus dark as they just cutting through each other's like own defenses and weapons and attacks. Was an awesome way of introducing that character of Dion. This guy. So yet again, we have what are they called? Jesus, icon. An icon being used as a weapon to take out the enemy, but then also finding out he's a prince.
But for his people, he's a hero, right? He is the hero that you hope to call
a champion.
in, he's an absolute champ. And his father is such an interesting character, where you're not sure, is he malevolent or is he being warped, or is he like, does he truly believe what he is saying? Like, it started to remind me of in the Lord of the Rings, like Dion's arc started to remind me a bit of Faramir, who just wants, to be recognized by his father, and his father putting him into war and basically saying you're not good enough and favoring another son. And it just really reminded me of, and even that kingdom just sort of reminded me of Gondor. I mean, it looks like Minas Tirith nearly, it's so cool. And I just love that Dion as a character, like, even his romance, it's not something that's like overly in your face or anything like that, but it's there, it's present, and it's another powerful characteristic of this character. And in that kind of time period and in that kind of kingdom, you could see, with a character as ignorant as Clive's mother pulling the strings, you could see her basically going, well, you can't be king because like you're not going to give us grandchildren, right? You
Yeah.
could kind of see that kind of horrible thinking, and like pushing him out as an outcast of you're not good enough for this kingdom, but I've like just invaded in and had a child, and now he's good enough because I've decided he's good enough, and like it's a really messed up situation. Like I just love that whole arc.
Yeah, and I like you bring up his relationship because it puts something on the line for Dion, right? Up until that point,
Yeah.
you're just like he's just serving the king, he's doing his duty, but at the end, he's just like, no, I got someone I love that that because especially when I don't know if it's before or after he gets his ass beat, but when they part ways and he's like, this is the point where we separate. I have to go do this. Maybe I'll see you again. Maybe I won't. And they have that kind of moment, and you're like, okay. And then his because then he kind of has this self journey. His point is one of the times I wish that you could play different characters and not just Clive, because I wanted to play
agreed.
Dion's journey of him going, I just killed all these people. I am bandaged. I am bruised. I now have to walk that little girl that I think was in a couple other cutscenes, like slowly healed him back up. He wanted to make sure that she got the gold. I'm like, Dion is such an interesting character that as much time as we had with him, and I love that Joshua is kind of the one that brokered that, and they talk about how they were kids together and had this relationship because they were both, royalty. His journey was one that I thought was, I wish I could have played a part of that for maybe 20-30 minutes and see his kind of self-reflection on what he's done and how he's going to grow. Because the next time you see him, I believe he jumps into that battle and he's ready. He's on your side. He's ready to go. But it's like, I want to know what it took for you to get there.
Yeah.
Because he was lost too, man. You just killed your father. You just lost your relationship.
Yeah, by
you
his
don't
own
know what
hand.
you're doing. Yeah, you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
That would have been a very interesting thing to kind of see to a conclusion.
And some of those flower picking missions could have been given to him then. Like Clive, like get on with the real thing.
No, like 100%. I get why the developers did it, and it's built into the design of the game. But I so wish you played as more than Clive, and Dion is one of those characters. Like there's so many points where it cuts away to him where I was like, actually put this in my hands. Like let me run around as him. Let me be this character. He's so cool, and he's a hero of his own story.
Yeah.
He's not just a supporting character. Like, and that's one of the great things about this game. So I like the most interesting way to talk about this game is the story and the spoilers, because there's just such great characters in here with great arcs that are like fully fleshed out in ways that it was like one of the complaints of Final Fantasy 15, which is a game I really enjoyed, but there was so many arcs felt missing. Like characters didn't, grow beyond Noctis and things like that. And in this game, there's an abundance of that. There's a lot, like even the NPC side characters who give you side quests have full arcs and things. Like there's
even when you hit pause, what I forget what they call it. Was it ATB? Where every cutscene you could pause it and you could read all the lore,
active time lore. Yeah.
Or ATL. Yeah. I did that so much because I just wanted to read all these things. Like, oh, this person knew Dion knew Joshua when they were doing this. Him and his father have this relationship. Him and the court are doing this. I'm like, dude, there is so much into this game that, like you were saying earlier, Eric, like it is very Game of Thrones-ish, where there's so much going on. It's almost, you got to play it a second time because now you're going to get it. You're going to be like, oh yeah, this person was this guy. And now I get it more on the second time around. But yeah, Dion for me was a character that if we're going to make DLCs, we make Dion get something in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Any more on Dion and Bahamut apart from the awesome fight in space?
Dude, that fight was awesome, man.
It was
badass.
It was over the top and it was outrageous.
Actually, an annoying thing happened for you because I think Chris, you were joking to me about something like thinking that you're going to go to space in this game.
I made a joke. Way before that, I made a joke. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you go to space in this game. Like, I was so joking.
So then when that happened, I knew Chris was past this point. So I just sent him a message going, I am laughing right now. And I sent him like an emoji of moons and stars and shit because I went up to space. But I was like in the middle of the fight, in the middle of that moment. I was near the end. It was so fucking cool. And then the power went in my house.
Oh, no!
And I had to do the whole thing again. And
that's a 20-minute battle, my friend.
Yeah, I was so annoyed.
But it's not just that, right? Even though the battle's so cool, when you have a moment like that and the momentum breaks, it's just not as fun as it to go back and do it again. It is on a second playthrough, but when you actually literally were like near the end of the fight, and it's not that you lost, it's that like the power went on it. That sucks.
I was like 2 hits away from beating him and everything. Like, I was like really close to beating him.
That's
but
terrible.
I think for me personally, Bahamut is my least favorite designed icon.
I'm not crazy about the design of him as a dragon, and I think it's that I have seen cooler designs.
Well, yeah, we look at Final Fantasy VII. It's Neo Bahamut Zero.
Yeah.
There's so many other ways to do them where they kind of made them this fluid.
Or even like
kind of
Final Fantasy X, where he's just a big buff ass dragon, you know?
They just
give me that.
They look like a winged dragonborn just kind of standing there.
Yeah, he's sick.
Yeah, I would agree that he's probably the weakest designed out of all of them.
They're watching, just like looking and going, what is he? Like, I just couldn't like quite grasp. There was like a load of like guns or something attached to him, and it was very interesting design for Bahamut.
I mean, it was a cool move. It was cool to watch him do the Giga Flare, whatever he was doing. I agree. Sure. I mean, when you compare him pound for pound to like how they redid Ifrit and Shiva and Titan, he was and Bahamut, I'd argue, is one of the coolest summons. He was probably the most lackluster.
Yeah, definitely. But another one of the coolest summons. Bringing us on to our final dominant and icon, and one that I think is designed really fucking cool, is King Barnabas, who is also Odin. I love Odin. He's not in every Final Fantasy, but when he is in it, he's always a good time. It's always such an interesting design for the character, because obviously the name comes from like the Norse myth, but the character doesn't necessarily look Nordic. Like, it's always like this big dark knight, you know? But the 6-legged horse always looks amazing. What did you guys think of Barnabas as a character?
I think first for him, like when I first heard of the name, I was like, really? Like, because again, there's sort of this idea that he's sort of the somewhat Sephiroth of it, I suppose, or I don't know if that's the right sort of thing, but he's the guy who messes with you.
That's wrong.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry. He's essentially kind of like the vessel of evil in this game that you're eventually gonna have to go against.
Yeah.
Like he's in it, and he's a big bad. He's not the big bad, but he's a big bad. And I just thought Barnabas was not the best name. I think Dion, actually, now that you pointed out, is an anagram for Odin, would have been good.
It's perfect. It's sitting right there.
Yeah.
Right there. But
I would have liked that.
Yeah.
So at first I was a bit like thinking to myself, okay, Barnabas is not doing much. Don't really like the name. Yeah, he looks fine, I suppose. And then it's when Kupka is dead, and it's when you're chasing him on the ship, and when Barnabas cuts through the ocean itself, I was just like, this guy is fucking badass. Why was he not in this more? That's so cool.
Yeah, I love his ability when he's like just slicing through the air and it's just cutting shit up. And like, he splits the sea, and it's very Moses almost, but it's like a dark Moses, you know? And it's and even then when he like is saying like run, and the sea starts closing in, and they're running, and Jill is holding off the water. That's one of my favorite scenes in the whole game. Like, it's
was awesome. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but now that you say that, she was running around freezing it so that it didn't collapse in on you. That was awesome.
What did you think of Barnabas as a character?
I dug him. I thought it took me a while to wrap my head around him, because he is because this is where the game gets very religious at this point. Like he starts quoting scripture. He's talking about, literally he gets to the point where he's talking about gods and the end of the world. And so for me, the game at this point takes a very different turn in tone, where at this point it was political boundaries and wars with these kingdoms, where he's like, I've been doing this and I finally found my purpose, and it's to serve God and all these things. I'm like, oh, you're very not into who wins the end of the war. You've got this agenda, or at least this thing feeding into you, that you've got a higher purpose. You feel like you're serving this divinity cause. So for me, Barnabas is a stand away from all the other characters, because nobody else is on his level of the agenda of what they're trying to accomplish. As far as his look, he looks kind of like Clive, kind of like, I'm looking at a picture of him right now.
You're right.
He's got this look of like, and you can see how, because he is supposed to be the body that Ultima wants to go after. There's a reason why he's manipulating Odin, the strongest one, before Ifrit arrives. So this is the character that's meant to challenge Clive the most, and that's essentially what he's saying like the whole time. Like, I'm here to battle you. I'm here to show you that there is no point to all of this. You know, you need to sacrifice yourself for this higher power. And at the end, he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. There's always a choice. So for me, this is where the game completely does a 180 and starts focusing on this divinity level of higher power versus saving the world and these different countries. Where when you start talking to Barnabas, it seems at this point he's like, that's meaningless, that's kid stuff, we don't like, this isn't the end game, this is. And then so for me, the game completely changes in tone, and then what you're and the agenda of what the enemies want you to start doing. So I thought it was extremely interesting, and I did not see that coming, because once you started talking the way you was, I'm like, oh, this game's going in a whole different direction now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Barnabas is an essential character for where the arc goes. You kind of need someone on the ground level who can be a spokesperson on behalf of, because like anytime Ultima talks, it's in language that's just sort of, it's above us, right? Like, he's talking in grand concepts. We get a gist of what he means, but we'll never fully understand him as a being because he's, above us. But Barnabas is mortal. So when he's talking, we're like, okay, I get it now. I get where you're going with this. I do find that some of the stuff he says is a little bit generic. There's so many villains like that where it's like, what I want is for the betterment of everyone, the next phase of human evolution, which is they all go crazy. And it's like, yeah, I've heard that before. But the way he's utilized in the story and just how badass he is, he's one of the coolest characters in the game. His music stood out to me in a big way. It was really dark and haunting and gothic. And I also loved his like henchman character, his sidekick.
Oh yeah, who makes bodies of what was that guy's name?
Slipnir.
Yeah,
he was so weird and slimy and horrible. And I loved him. I thought he was great. I thought he was another great villain who like he was one of the first people to actually say mythos. Like, he was when he came into the story and started saying that, it's like, oh, I don't know who this guy is, but he's in the know. Like, he knows shit. And that's when you start getting hints that, like, oh, maybe King Barnabas's region are the people who, like, they know what's really going on. Everyone else is, as you said, Craig, like, they're fighting over land and shit, and these guys over here, like, none of that matters. Like, you just haven't got long to live. I don't know why you're fighting over this stuff. You aren't thinking about the end game at all, which is that we're all getting wiped out.
What did you say the guy's name was?
Slipnir.
Is he the one that comes in and gut punches Hugo?
Yeah.
When he loses his hands? That was him, right? Okay.
Yeah. Slipnir is the name of the horse too, right?
Yes. So Slipnir is like, remember when Garuda in the church chapel thing summoned these two weird kind of
the sisters, the harpy sisters?
the demon sisters.
Yeah,
so Slipnir is that for Odin. He's a conjuration of Odin.
Dope.
Nice. Yeah,
I don't think I dug too much into him. I thought it was like his right hand man. But now that you're saying that's the conjuring of him, because he comes back with like 50 forms.
Yeah.
And was that just him? Was that just him summoning him over and over again?
Yeah, pretty much. Just he can summon Slipnir as much as he wants and just have a whole army.
Also,
that was a cool fight too.
So is that character even an actual person? Is that what you're saying? He's not?
No, not really. No, I think he's just an extension of Barnabas.
That's really cool. I really like that.
I could be wrong again.
No, I think you're right, because I was always thinking too. I'm like, why does Odin get another thing with him? He gets he has the horse and him, so that would make sense if. Because and the other thing that was always cool, I don't think we dug into it, is like when they turn into the icons and they have their big forms. I love that they have their kind of slightly powered up form. They're kind of humanistic looking form. So I'd imagine that if he could do the humanistic looking form, the horse could take on something and be the right hand guy.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. But yeah, I just really like the role Barnabas plays in the story, and I think it's important to have at least one of the dominants be a villain character who's actually on side with the main villain. You know what I mean? Like, Kupka is obviously a villain, but he's not. He has no idea about Ultima. Like, he's just got his own goals going on. Like, he actually has no idea that he's being played as a puppet in all this as well. There is a really weird scene. We mentioned it earlier where Barnabas is sitting on the bed and Ultima is turning into lots of people.
Yeah.
And at one point is like cradling Barnabas. I think he turns into his mother.
He does.
Yeah, that got really
it's weird, right? It's
He's a real Oedipus complex.
Yeah, I think so. So I think, is he a character that's just longing to like be loved? And
I don't know. It's weird because doesn't he turn into because he turns into Benedicta, right? Because we understand that that's so. At some point, he's got and this is what threw me off. We know that there's people that have these weird mommy things where they want to be just loved and cared for. But then at some point, he had to have known Benedicta, and maybe that was a past love. Like, why would it be turning into her specifically? And versus any other woman that I guess he just would have had pleasure with.
Fair point.
At this point, he's going like, "Come on, my king, it's always been me." Because doesn't I think he even says something. He's like, "Oh, you're still in love with Sid, and your devotion and loyalty is still to Sid." So that was something that was never really explained either, because it made it seem like Benedicta was coming over to his side, and that's why she left Sid, and that's why I was getting confused. I'm like, well, is Benedicta working with Barnabas? Then at the same time, then why is she in love with Hugo? Or that's where I was getting a little mixed up with this.
Yeah,
love triangle.
I think you're right. I think actually, never mind what I said earlier. Scrap that, everybody. Maybe that was the real Benedicta earlier, and she was having a little thing with Barnabas, and on the side having the thing with Kupka.
Right, because that was the whole thing with Sid, is that she left Sid to join up with
right.
him.
She works with the Kingdom of Welud, right?
That's what I was under the assumption.
I think you're right.
So at that point, I just didn't get, and that's what I'm saying. There needs to be more with Sid's background, because I want to see how him. I guess he got Benedicta out of whatever hostile area they were in once upon a time. But like, I want to know the shift of when she did that, and then he stayed behind, and then obviously that's when he starts the hideout. But like, there has to be something that plays an important part there.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe she's from Welud, because Barnabas isn't. Barnabas' mother aren't from Welud.
That's right. They do mention that he comes from some other foreign land.
So maybe when they conquered Benedicta's home. Benedicta left, met Sid, had a thing, but then somehow Barnabas was able to convince her to join back to her home side of Welud.
Well, she's very much right. I always get the feeling that she's on
her side.
Yeah, and if there's
she's
a
banging
winning...
everybody in this game.
Yeah, but if there's
all over the place.
If there's a winning team, that's who she's playing for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I still think she has. I still think Barnabas's ideas is what she's actually believing in.
Oh, okay. You think like,
you know what I mean? I still think his end game plan is something that she 100% believes in. Whether or not she once upon a time loved Sid, or maybe does or does not love Hugo, or even Barnabas for that matter. I think she's in love with the idea of what Barnabas is trying to accomplish, and that's why she gives Sid like 2 times. She's like, "This is the time; it's gonna come." But again, they don't dive that much into it. And Barnabas, out of all the other characters, is easily the most complex, because you got to know, why is Ultima influencing him? Why is he the king when it's like you were saying, his mother came from this foreign land? Why is every other country afraid of him? But they don't dive into like his background and what he's been doing to make all this happen.
Yeah, for sure. And his relationship with Ultima is a super, super interesting one. But Ultima, it was the next character we got to talk about, is one that we got to dive into in part 2 of the FF16 spoiler cast. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to part 1. Don't forget to get in touch with your own thoughts on everything we brought up. There's way more we could talk about the characters. You guys have probably picked up on way more lore than we've even picked up. Like, point out things to us if you know we're wrong. Point out more things if there's more information that we wanted to know about certain characters, if you have it. Or any little, like, your favorite things about certain characters that we brought up. Please do let us know. If you're watching this YouTube, jump down in the comments to share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this discussion, give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell for all future content. To those of you who are listening on audio platforms, you can also touch base on social media. Craig, you want to shout out your handles?
Yeah, you can do us at Last Call Production on all the social medias. You can find me at Craig Perales on all the social medias, and on YouTube, you can find us at Last Call Gaming.
Excellent. And then for the Brothers Take, if you want to get in touch with us, it's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, X, whatever it's called nowadays, at the Brothers Take. So do get in touch, guys. Make sure you're subscribed to both channels for all future podcasts. And don't forget to check out part 2 coming very soon. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll talk to you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to part 1 of the Final Fantasy 16 spoiler cast. Part 2 will be up on Last Call Gaming's podcast, so make sure to jump over to Last Call Gaming on YouTube or on audio platforms to check out part 2 of the Final Fantasy 16 spoiler cast.